This is the 6th day of the Apr.1996 7-day retreat in Springwater. Yesterday, in a group meeting, while we were talking about resistance to sitting down quietly, facing, listening inwardly, without excluding the drips and caws and motor hums. The question which came up, I think, in the first talk and surfaced again, why is there resistance to simply sitting here quietly and allow to witness what is happening? And one person mentioned this whole idea of having to drop the self with all its images frightens me. There's a real fear that I would have to let go of what it took such arduous work all my life to build up, to nurture, to take care of, in education, in therapy, in relationship. And there's a great fondness, a great attachment to this, what you call the story of my life. And the idea that I would have to give that up causes instant anxiety. Can one relate to that? It's not just one person's presenting this to a group. Many people have presented it in private meetings. It is the story of our life to be afraid of losing it. The me with all of its memories and anticipations and acquisitions, not just of a material kind, but in thought, in knowledge, in imagination, what I have become and what I may yet become in the future, how I want to develop further, fulfill myself. And I ought to give that up? For what? What's going to be in its place if that ever was gone? Does that sound familiar? Because we're not looking at somebody else's thing. Working together is always looking here to how what someone else, quote unquote, says, how it resonates in oneself, so that we can communally look together at our fears and desires and maybe discover misunderstandings together. I can't say, I never say this or that, but I'm not aware of ever saying, give up your self-image, renounce the story of your life, let it go, it's no good. so foreign to this work, would be so foreign to this work to say this. And yet this is how we are conditioned from infancy on to hear what authority figures say around us. Something is described and one suspects the least bit that what is described is sorrowful or negative, then one hears implied, don't do it, drop it, be done with it. Don't fall into the temptation of it, overcome it. That's how we are trained to hear. It's very, very, very difficult to listen so quietly, so non-prejudiciously. At what is being said. Very difficult, because our training in self and other judgment conditions the hearing process and the looking process to distort what comes in according to one's trained expectations or apprehensions. So what is it that we really say in talking about the story of our life? The accumulation of images about myself, which are so instantly defended, protected, guarded, and feared for, to watch it all, to see it all, to behold it as it happens, and the consequences of it. The anxiety when I'm attacked, when I'm criticized. Insecurity, now they don't love me anymore. They will work against me. They will tell other people I'm worthless. And the almost instantaneous response to such criticism by others, or sometimes it may not even be criticism, one just tells somebody how else one could do what was done, maybe do it a little bit differently, and one senses the instantaneous rigidities in the person to whom one is talking. The fear of going under. Is that what we fear, to go under in criticism, to drown? To lose one's life in the sun? To lose other people's love and appreciation, respect, including one's own. To observe that, because all of these are the manifestations and consequences of self-image and the holding on to it. It works all right when I'm all by myself. My little room, doors closed, no telephone. Maybe it works, does it? One has to watch. The moment there is interrelationship, something may happen to the self-image of mine, which I have nurtured and protected, cultivated. Somebody may dent it or break it, talk bad about me, or what I think is bad. I won't even listen carefully enough to hear what the person is saying, because it's already all rigid. Like when you sprain an ankle, the whole leg becomes rigid to protect that vulnerable injury, that vulnerable ankle. Before anybody puts a cast on, the body has already splintered it through rigidity, and so it is psychologically. Somebody tells, someone else about something that didn't quite go wrong, and can one still listen or watch the rigidity? Not I should be done with it, I should be open. That's not the point. The point is to be there with the whole process and witness it from beginning to end. Is that possible? Not withdraw in the middle into self-isolation and conjecture and speculation and fantasy, mending or sulking. Let's leave that open as a challenge to all of us, every one of us. Is it possible at a moment which seems so dangerous, so potentially annihilating, to stick it out? Not through bracing oneself, but through listening openly to what's happening. Listening openly to the bracing, if it does take place, to the whole thing. The desire to retreat, and seeing the desire to retreat, it doesn't have to complete itself, because there's still presence here, still awareness, to hear and feel and see the whole thing through. And in this way of not retreating, withdrawing from hurt and defense and all the reactions already programmed into this organism, by not withdrawing from it, there is tremendous learning going on about the nature of self-image and how it functions in our life. To learn and allow the intelligence of learning to take care of the thing. Just watching it, maybe seemingly endlessly, a repetition of the same story. And yet maybe a little bit more presence, a little bit less withdrawal, and therefore more learning about this straitjacket that the brain prepares for all of us in recording and attaching to the recordings of what I am, believing in it, believing that they tell me the truth of what I am. So, I don't know whether with what has been said so far this morning has been clarified that there is no injunction, no command to say drop it, get rid of it, overcome it. That's lethal to this vulnerable opening, to the defenses going into action when somebody hurts my self-image or endangers it. Somebody may say, well, this isn't exactly what this person was referring to. It wasn't referring just to self-image and the defense. They were referring to this whole accumulated meanness. What was said was all the things I've gone through, all the things I've done, learned, suffered, exposed myself to. Acquired skills, talents, appreciations. And right now, as we're talking about it, and hopefully everybody looks at this, as it operates in one's own life? Can one see that this accumulated garden, developed, cultivated, and accumulated garden of my story, my meanness, is taking place right now in this mind, in fantasy, in imagination, in thought, and idea? Can we see that? Where are my talents right now, my skills, my possessions, physical, psychological, spiritual? I can think about it, and then the thought is, oh my, I hope nobody expects me to drop those, because I need it, that's what I am. And all the while, not hearing the music of dripping water on the ground, the soggy ground, the wooden deck, the roof, the light of sun filtering through the windows, the aliveness of this body, and all the bodies are here, which takes no image to be sensitively in touch with. Sensitively, and if there's no attachment to a self-center, joyfully being in touch with each other quietly, openly listening, looking, being in the most spaciously possible awareness that knows no limitation through self-story, and yet throws light on self-story as it emerges and is feared about. I may lose it. What will there be when it's gone? See, skillfully being with people, enjoying the garden, crocus is coming up, the buds on the dry, seemingly dry branches, but they're getting more color all the time. They're getting redder and oranger and more yellow and brown, shiny, with each day of a faintly warming sun. So, being with that. Maybe the urge to take out a watercolor pad and apply color to the white paper, let it flow into each other, marking a hill or a valley, a tree yet without leaves, or listening to music. Sometimes the music of the dripping and crowing and birds and branches is enough. And sometimes one may want to listen to whatever the taste is. But does that, any of that, or doing one's daily work, in this case with some joy, feeling of goodness, accomplishing something, finishing something. Does that need self-story? Does that need self-image in itself? Or can one see right now at a moment of listening openly on a beautiful spring-like morning with ice on the deck? Does one realize that being here, and being here wholeheartedly, maybe even lovingly with what's there, right in front of one, right under one's eyes, under one's nose, under one's feet, doesn't need self-image. That's extra. It is not necessary and has a high potential of suffering. You see, there is confusion in the mind. isn't there? The thought I may have to let go of self-image, story, future, past, is sort of the idea I'll lose everything that makes this moment alive and joyful. Imagining that the only thing that makes this moment alive and joyful is thinking about how terrific I am, how wonderful the world is. But thinking is secondary to being, which needs no evaluation, positive or negative. It speaks for itself if there's the sensitivity to listen quietly, non-self-centeredly, openly. Did it become clearer? Or is there still confusion? No demand on oneself to overcome anything, but this gentle questioning. What is going on? Can it be illuminated, this moment, by a quiet listening, looking inwardly, outwardly? And it's an amazing thing, not lost on most people who spend quiet time. How much more transparent and luminous it becomes inside and outside. Transparency of thoughts, a jealous thought or an angry or an anxious thought. Transparency of the emotions that are connected with it. Transparency of the reactions. I don't want to feel this way. I wish I felt better. What can I do? And in stepping outside of the house, the luminousness of the icy ground and the blue sky covered with parting clouds. How clear the birds around the bird feeder, pushing each other away, and yet not minding it as a whole affair. It's just how birds live at the bird feeder. Grabbing and running and coming back and trying to get the place, sometimes deferring to the larger ones. Without any written rules, it just works of its own. And it can be seen so sparklingly on a beautiful day, even on a dull day. Dullness has its own luminescence. When the mind is not grasping for something or defending something or worrying about itself, what it all has to lose. Also, there seems to hover confusion around this whole thing of judgment. At a moment like this, sitting here together in this spacious, quiet hall, listening to the dripping, water from the roof and water from the nose, blowing the nose and breathing. faint hum of motor. At a moment of listening and looking together, as the motor turns off, no need to judge anything good or bad, is there? And if a thought arises, I can't do it. I can't listen like this. Why can others listen better than I? And that thought becomes transparent. There's no need to judge it as being bad or good. And judgment itself, as an activity of a brain kicking into the quiet of simple listening, can be seen for what it is. It interrupts the quietness of listening and narrows down the field, particularly when it catches on and more thoughts follow. How many years will I have to sit before I can really hear the way others seem to be able to hear? Probably it'll never dawn on me. I'm a hopeless case. On and on and on. The thoughts rolling. It's a very narrow tunnel. A tunnel of thought. And then maybe we're still here sitting together, and a moment of coming to, and the tunnel is gone and the listening is there. And seeing, without any need for conventional judgment, that tunnel living is quite different from the openness of simply being here. That can be seen and that can speak for itself. It needs no extra brain activity to condemn it or to justify it. It can be felt. This is what I was referring to earlier and saying, let us watch the emergence and activity of self-images. How narrow, how tight they feel. How wearing to keep defending oneself and worry about not being liked, not judging it as bad or good, but seeing the density, the chokedness of living like that. It speaks for itself, doesn't it? It needs no outside evaluation. So, and if there is an increasing realization of how it feels to live in a tunnel, comparison of judgment, well, many, many tunnels that this mind withdraws into. And seeing it at a moment of waking up to no tunnel, then obviously the thought may arise, who wants to live in the tunnel for the rest of their life? Why? Is that judgment? Sometimes this sort of is intimated in group meetings. Well, why are you judging when somebody says, I don't want to live like this. I'm fed up with it. I've had enough of it. And then somebody may say, are you judgmental? No, in that case, it's not judgment, it's an outcry coming out of a realization of the narrowness of our mind-created existence as this or that. And it can only really be felt when there's a waking up into some space which brings this into the fore. In that case, it is something that is in memory now. The tightness of the shoe that came off. The foot still feels the pain. The body is still reverberating with upset and excitement, anxiety, craving. But a moment of openness reveals it all very clearly. And then comes a very natural question. Why perpetuate this way of living? And at a moment when it comes out of the openness of listening, it is not judgmental in our conventional way. Judgment comes out of brain activity, good and bad, comparing and thinking. This comes existentially and kindles something. Kindles something in us. To be in touch with something that is not constricting, not anxiety arousing, not pushing and pulling, not pressuring, but openly revealing all there is without laying any claim to it. So next time that thought says, you're being judgmental, stop for a moment and look, where did this response come from that is being labeled as judgmental by thought? Because if we don't stop, thought runs away with us. Well, I am judgmental, I shouldn't be judgmental, and not looking at what it was that was experienced for a moment of clarity. So had one really just been judgmental? Or had one seen and felt something and questioned it to its very core? Why live this way? Which doesn't mean I know how to live otherwise. I don't. Living otherwise comes out of the clarity of being here now, this moment, in touch with drips and drops and sun rays and lots of deer who hardly seem to run away anymore. You can talk to them. Have you tried talking to them? They almost seem to listen. Particularly the young ones, they're so innocent. Haven't heard any shots yet. Maybe they walk a few steps away, but they don't necessarily run like they do later in the year or did until now. I don't know what's happening to the deer. The tail twitches a little bit, ready to flash if there's anything untoward or uncanny, but they are very curious. And they're everywhere. I lost my thread, but that's all right. What thread do you need when everything is there? The whole cloth, the whole embroidery. Now, embroidery is not the good word. It isn't fixed. It isn't fixed. It's open and fresh and not my own. That's why it's so beautiful. Everyone can find this out, everyone. How marvelous it is to simply be with everything with no need to hold on to oneself. No need. That's not renunciation. It's water dripping and birds calling. By holding on to oneself, I simply mean thinking about oneself. That's not necessary in listening this moment. We will end here for today.